Welcome to the EnsoReal Paradigm Shifters podcast. This show is for and about the entrepreneurs who work to improve and expand our human well-being by bringing cutting-edge technologies and ideas to life. We are Marie and Magnus Dahlgren, your hosts. In this episode, we talk with Hendrik de Lange. Hendrik is an excellent patent attorney who works to provide clients with the best possible patent protection for their inventions. And now, here's our conversation with Hendrik de Lange. Hallo.
Hello.
Hi.
I would like really to thank you for your openness, because I was following you for a while in our American Real group tribe. How would you want to be introduced to our listeners from your perspective?
That's a good question. First of all, I am originally an engineer from an engineering background. I dreamed all my life to become an inventor, a successful inventor, in the sense that I would sell my inventions to the world, for two reasons: for making the world a better place, and for making me a better person. Financially and I would say emotionally.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
This actually is quite hard, and some of the things in the past are still keeping me back from reaching this level. The idea that I'm a patent attorney, active around the globe in protecting inventions, helping people to protect inventions, helping them to sell them, and helping them to develop. Mm-hmm. So what I do actually is I help my clients with the things that I would very much like to do myself.
Oh, that's interesting.
So
And
my whole podcast idea is the people that I invite are by definition my heroes, because they reach the status or a standing or a position that I am aspiring. That's about it, I would guess.
Hendrik, and why invention?
That's a good question. It is because I love these things, and I love the whole idea that you have somehow a problem, and somehow you are thinking about it, and most of the time you're thinking about it when you're outside your normal routine. So when you're swimming, or when you're showering, or when you're just waking up or going to sleep. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly there is a level of consciousness that is higher than before. And the moment that you reach this level of consciousness, the world is a different place. Right. And the word, if you look at the word invention, it's really cool. There's the part is vent. It is Latin or French for wind. It is as if something is blowing in your mind, mm-hmm. from outside, and it is a source of nature, actually, the wind, and then suddenly you're at a higher level. And the moment you're there and you do something with it, the world is a different place. So it is a very weird thing that you create something out of nothing, and suddenly the world is a bit more valuable. It's fascinating.
I think someone like Benjamin Franklin did not patent a lot of his inventions, maybe none of them, which is the polar opposite of protecting inventions. Could you talk a little bit to each point about why should patents be protected versus why shouldn't they be let out in the world and benefit everybody?
Yeah, well, there's two totally opposite philosophies. And it is a philosophy. If you look at the history of the patent systems, actually, originally, it was not as much as to protect something new as to attract foreign skilled workers, especially the Italian skilled workers who had a lot of knowledge about glass making and about specific skills that were lacking, especially in England, the Netherlands, France. And in order to attract these skilled workers, they got monopolies. And slowly this developed into a way that people thought like, hey, this is good for our economy if we give somebody a temporary monopoly so that our economy and our level of wealth is rising. So that's the origin, and this is a medieval origin. The oldest patent systems are, well, the oldest patent system in coding, in law, is from Florence as we now know it. It's 15th century, but already in the 13th and 14th century there were monopolies given out by the English rulers. And most of the guys that got it were either Italians or Belgians or people with skills from outside. So it is that is the perspective of how would I say, a monarch or an authority giving out monopolies in order to get a higher level of economy.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, and that is mostly the people that don't get this monopoly, the competition. Well, they are most likely another philosophy, and it is actually a patent system is opposite to a free market system.
Huh.
And the idea currently of a patent system is actually a reward for investing time, money, energy in something new, where you don't know if the new is going to be a success. And there is something like a success rate of about 3%. So the moment somebody has a successful invention, you have to realize that there's approximately 30 unsuccessful inventions. So to get through this selection process, it simply costs time, energy, and money. And the moment somebody else sees, hey, this is commercially relevant, copying is most of the time relatively easy. Well, if you don't have a patent system in place, there's less incentive for people to put in all this energy and effort in something that they don't know if it's going to be a success. So in total, I'm pretty sure if you don't have a patent system, the economy as a whole is worse.
Okay.
And there is quite some evidence that is the case. If you look at any country in the world, if you look at in one axis the wealth and in the other the number of patents filed, and you see always a positive correlation.
Okay.
Correlation is no causation. It can also be a rich man's hobby. Once the people get wealthy, they start to accumulate patents. But if you look at, and that's a funny thing, if you look at the history of, for instance, the Netherlands, well, we have about 500 years of patent statistics. You see that the rise in patents, but also the fall in number of patents, always precedes a rise or a fall in economy. So there's a lagging time between the number of patents and the relative economy. And this lagging time is about 40 to 50 years. So it's big. That also means that if you now stop with a patent system, only our grandchildren in their summer of their life will experience a fall of economy. And that's fascinating what kind of time scales are involved in patent systems. It's really fascinating.
Okay.
Hendrik, I have the question about this another state of consciousness you said. Do you think that this state of consciousness it's something you can deliberately make, create, to be there, to create, to invent, or it just comes and goes without any preparation, without notice?
This is something that is very difficult to ask for a hardcore technical guy as me. But more and more I know that there is more than only our minds in our heads. So I do think, yes, there is somehow a way to improve your or expand your consciousness, maybe with substances, but also maybe with meditation or what I told you earlier. Most of the time, if you want a solution to a problem, it is best to get in a sort of relaxed state, like indeed going under the shower, when you're sleeping or when you're just in a awake situation, but when you're very relaxed, then somehow your brain is more able to make connections that you can't make if you're fully into the problem. So it is, and I'm pretty sure there are ways to improve that. But it's not very common that I know of.
Okay. And could you tell us when was the first time when you experienced this kind of state? Do you remember this?
Oh, yeah. I had myself. I wanted to make a product, and this is already. I must say this was in '97. So that is 21 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to develop a product that was really free of waste, a packaging product. And I came up with an idea that it would be nice to make packages out of ice, just frozen water. Simple as that.
Interesting.
And to make packages or to make things out of frozen water, you have a problem that water in the solid state as ice is about 10% higher in volume than the same amount of water in liquid state. So it expands during solidification. That's why ice always floats on top of water. That's why we can skate. But that means that if you have a mold, that any mold you make, any kind of any kind of product, you have to allow the material to expand with 10%, and that's a lot. And I was thinking, like, how can I do it? And I came to a solution which actually worked. Mm-hmm. But then it appeared that the product as such was so unstable that it was actually not a good invention. But the idea of thinking about it and then suddenly coming to the solution, and the solution in this case was a rotary mold, where it was slowly layer for layer on the inside, this packaging material, mostly bottles, was created. That worked as a charm, but the product as such was totally useless.
Interesting.
And this is quite clear for inventing. You always have lots of failures before you hit a success. Technical failures, but also failures because there's no market for it. There's nobody wants to buy it. Nobody's interested. So you always reach lots of failures. Part of the
and
process.
In extension of what you just told us, what is your attitude towards failures? How do you perceive them? Like a good teacher, or it's something that frustrates you really badly? Could you share this part with us, please?
Well, it depends on which failures. The technical failures are always very wise lessons, very well accepted. Mm-hmm. But failures that you misinterpret the market, that you can't sell the stuff you think you can sell, those are very, very frustrating. They come in at a personal level, I would say, with me. Mm-hmm. And that has also to do with the technical, the failures at the technical level do not have such a financial impact as the failures at marketing level, because then mostly you already have invested quite a lot of time and effort. And it is always, you have to push through from the technical to the marketing level somehow. There are different kind of failures, but it is the second part is really coming in much harder.
And could you share with us, please, your biggest maybe failure, if you feel like doing this, and what the lesson was from this particular failure?
Well, this is a very, very old one, and that is really a design failure. This is not a product that was so much commercial, but when I think I was 12 or 13, I made a table in my room where I could have my trains on. And I designed this table just exactly the size that I could move around, exactly, so that it would be as big as possible, but I was still able to move around. But I've never realized that I would sooner or later grow. So when I became 16, I was simply too big, actually too big to be in my room when this table was down. And I made it, how would I say, I made it that it could be lifted up. So from the age of 16, I could not do anything with this table anymore. I could not play with my trains. Luckily, I had no interest in my trains anymore, so that was another story. But this is a design error. Well, you make only once, because now I don't have this problem anymore. But it was so weird to realize, like, nobody could have told me. But it is so simple. So this is a typical one. The other one is with this ice bottle. What I thought is that if you have a frozen water, ice, and you have a liquid inside, which must have an alcoholic content or a sugary content, because else the liquid, the fluid inside would freeze as well. That there was a neat equilibrium if you selected the right amount of sugar or the right amount of alcohol within this liquid, within this ice bottle, so that the liquid stayed liquid and the ice stayed ice. This works perfectly for any refrigerator that has a very neat freezing point. But the moment a real refrigerator has a freezing, how would I say, area between which it starts to freeze and between which it stops. And this gap is so big that any bottle would start leaking within one night. So if you had Coca-Cola or you had any alcoholic drink inside one of these bottles, one night was enough to make the bottle disappear or make holes in it because of this unstable temperature of the freezing. So it's an error. You don't realize until you do it.
And could you share
and
with us?
if you see it afterwards, then you think like, yeah, this is logical. But you don't realize
afterwards.
Yes, afterwards.
Logical. Yeah. Could you please share with us the moment when you decided to proceed with the inventions? Because you started pretty early. You said the first invention 12, 13.
Yes.
So I'm just wondering, when did it start?
Ooh, I don't exactly remember. But very early. Some things I was triggered by, for instance, a book I found on the shelves of my dad. It was a book about chemical experiments. And I still remember I was 11. I made soap on a recipe that was there with the aid of my sister, who was already in secondary school and had her first chemistry lessons, which was fabulous. You have fat and you have this sodium, what is it?
Sodium hydroxide.
Hydroxide. And you mix it together and you boil it and you have soap. It's magnificent. Also in this book was an instruction to make a distilling device. Well, I've made some 5-6 distilling devices up to really semi-commercial production level. So I was always triggered with these things. But it was my dad had always I would say a makerspace. I think you can call it like that, where there's lots of materials, lots of tools. We could always experiment and make, and it was not only me, also my brother. For instance, we made an oven to smelt liquid metals for making specific parts. We put an engine on a skelter. We had this play skelter, and we put it on an engine, and we managed to make this thing driving around. All these kind of things. It was we were always busy making things.
And what did you like the most in this experience you told us about? Is it about creating new things out of old things, or what is important for you?
It's a combination of creation and learning. It is like you are busy with something that you don't know if it's going to work. And if you put on a I would say a children's skelter an engine of a what is it a motor-driven bicycle, you don't know if it's going to work. Nobody can tell you. You just simply don't know. So it is a journey. It is a discovery, and you learn. And it's the same with the ice bottle. It's the same with the distilling. It's with all these things. It's just each time a learning. And in this learning, you learn about materials and all their specific properties. You learn. It's done, and that's fascinating.
That's interesting.
And it will always be. That's the nice thing. This never dies out. This is just there.
And it sounds like a passion for life. What is going to be the next?
Yes.
That's great. That's
yes,
really
and it is also nice to see, like, how you see new things. For instance, in my profession, I always make a judgment, like, hey, is this going to be commercially successful or not?
Mm-hmm.
I cannot say a really clear thing. I always give it a judgment, like, this is going to happen, this is not going to happen.
Yeah.
And my judgment is miserable. You can't say which one is going to be successful and which not. It is impossible.
And you like it, that you can predict.
That's the cool thing. I mean, but that also means, like what I said earlier, like you have one success in 30 failures. So about 3% of all the inventions is going to be successful. That means that my profession, all this blue things you see here behind, 97% of my profession, 97% of my work is for nothing. That's the weird thing. But you never know which belongs to this 97% and which belongs to this 3%. So I always have to do my work as if it is in this 3%. And that's a really weird thing. And it is not very many of my colleagues want to admit that 97% of their time is wasted. And it is not actually wasted, because it is a sort of law of nature. Only if you have 100%, you have this 3%. If you cannot reach this 3% if you don't have this, every 30 failures on one success. You can't reach it. So it is a law of nature, because if you look at, for instance, the human body, the number of genes coding for properties in our life, that's the same percentage. It's also about 3%. So 97% of our genetic genome is non-coding, is ballast, is junk.
How do you think? Why do we need this?
In order to reach this 3%, it is maybe it is a sort of a statistical law of nature that you need 100 tries to get 3 successes. I think it's like that. There is this. It is a pattern that repeats in various fields of technology. Like you need it.
And how do you feel now about your work? Earlier in your life, you said it was more about creation and learning along the way. Does it feel nowadays more like contributing to the world, to other people?
Well, the weird thing is the patent business, as I do it right now, keeps me alive. But I'm still inventing stuff. I'm still doing what I really love. I'm still trying to get to create things. And there's one thing, and that's really, really cool. And that is also what is taught in this London Real Business Accelerator, is like, people think of products, and I'm a proponent of that, in the sense of they're physical. You can touch them, you can feel them, you can throw them, you can break them. And what is taught in this business course is like, make a non-physical or a non-intangible product, like a software product or a course. And I'm in the moment trying to expand in my head the whole idea of a product should not be constricted to only physical products. Because the moment I expand it and I really accept, like, okay, software products and courses and podcasts and books belong within the products, then I can exactly doing what I love. So it's a weird thing that only by changing the mindset, like what is a product, then suddenly I'm in. Dealing with patents is a service to my clients. I contribute to the success of my clients by writing patents, defending them. By making products, be it the course, be it the podcast, I'm suddenly working on my own success again.
Yeah.
And that's what I prefer.
When you talk about inspiration and the creation process, you make it sound almost like a non-Newtonian fluid that if you force it, it won't happen. But if you immerse yourself in it and just let it happen on its own timeline, then it comes to you easier. Would you agree with that, or do you have a different way of thinking about it?
Yeah, I would agree on it. It is very simple that there's some factors that stimulate creativity and stimulate, how would I say, people trying things. And the weird thing is, one of these factors is poverty. Sounds weird, but poverty is a really great stimulator of creation. Unless this poverty comes along with an unjust system. So the moment if you're getting yourself out of poverty for whatever reason that you made a creation, and that suddenly a government that is stealing that away, then poverty is not anymore a factor of success. But it's a huge driver. Poverty is, I would say, chaotic. If you look at for instance, the outskirts of big cities in Latin American countries, but also in African countries, where you have people building houses from scrap. Lots of governments don't like it. If you look from a distance, the most creative places on the planet are those places. And so there is chaos, definitely. And there is also, if you look from a more distant view on, for instance, favelas in Rio or in Sao Paulo, then in this chaos, again, originates a structure. Because people have to move around, they have to get their food in, they have to get their excrements out. So even in a total chaotic structure, still you will find some kind of structure. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
So yes, it is there. You should not steer it. You cannot steer it. You should also not steer poverty in order to get creative people.
Right.
So it will emerge automatically. But like the government of France is like wasting away the jungle, this city that is sort of around Calais originating. They throw away a very, very creative place, and they don't realize it.
When you say poverty, do you mean only in the financial sense, or is there?
Yes, only in the financial sense, not in the poverty. If the moment poverty is in abuse, like substance abuse or sexual abuse or whatever. But then, if this is happening, then actually that's a signal that there's an unjust system. You need a just system. The moment these kind of mechanisms take over, that means there's not a safe surrounding anymore. If you're threatened or your children are threatened by either prostitution or abuse or drugs or whatever, then it's gone. So it is. So poverty is a financial poverty, and there must be a just system. But most of the times, poverty comes along with an unjust system, and then it doesn't work.
Okay.
Like the Arab. I don't know if you remember this Arab Spring. There was this Tunisian guy who was selling his vegetables, and actually from a wheelbarrow. And then you think like, hey, it's a poor guy. No, he had his shop was his wheelbarrow. And if then there's a governmental institution that thinks it is a good idea to take away his wheelbarrow, he couldn't feed his children anymore. And if that governmental system, you cannot fight against, what options do you have left over? I can fully understand that this guy put fire on himself. Fully understand it. And that's the weird thing of unjust systems. They kill creativity massively.
I have a question.
Yes.
How do you combine inside yourself, first of all, this hard, perfect logic and creativity and deep feeling? Because for me, it sounds like a combination of these two things, and it's, to be honest, rare combination, because people tend to be all very sensitive or very technical and in their head. So how did you learn to combine those two? Maybe you have some hints to share with our listeners.
Yes, well, it is. I always understood that you need the best level of knowledge in order to be fully creative. And this is weird because you see lots of people that are creative are sort of escaping the hardcore science and the hardcore technology. And somehow, but I think, and this touches a bit on this higher conscious, I knew from very early on that I must not have the highest grades, that was not important, but have the highest understanding of all the things that were offered me. And this I got from a very early age. And I think everybody who is creative should have this in order to come to the full potential of their creativity. But I can still remember, and that's a funny thing. I was considering either becoming a chemical engineer or an architect. Mm-hmm. And I can still remember it was in the Delft University. Delft is a very high-standing international university. I came to the study of architecture, and there the whole idea was like, you don't need any technical knowledge. It is ballast for your creativity. Mm-hmm. I could not disagree more. If you want to construct a beautiful building, you should know everything about the statics and the construction, and then on top of that you should be creative. But you should not be creative as such. It doesn't work. And I was so frustrated by these presentation days that you could sort of sniff about what it was. I was so disappointed. I was like, okay, I'm not going to be an architect if there's no sound knowledge in the education about the structural and the technical aspects. So that's when I came to chemistry, actually.
The chemistry. And could you please share with us, where is this combination of creativity and logic you have currently in your job now? So people
it's funny, the technology and the technical background I use in advising my clients and in writing patents. It's very good to have a very deep technical knowledge about various fields of technology. The creativity is in the programs I write. What I see is that patents and writing patents, searching in patents, there is a lot of repetitive work that can be automized. And the fascinating thing is that automation of generating texts, automation of generating creative text is a very, very high level programming, and it requires lots of creativity. Another part is recognition. I analyze figures by recognizing what are parts of the figure, what are the reference signs. Most of the reference signs are drawn by hand, and how can I still read them? So it's an optical character recognition. It is very, very high technology level programming and lots of creativity. And it's a fascinating thing. And it's what I said. It is like the moment I accept, like, okay, this is a product, which it is in the end, then I would be fully aligned, which I'm half, I would say.
In the process. That's interesting. And when we asked you before the interview, what is this one fact you would like to talk about, to tell people? You said that patents are good for us. Could you explain a little bit to our listeners and to us too how patents are good for us and how do they protect inventions and inventors?
Yes. Well, there is a movement, and that is a movement that originates from the copyright that is really extended to, I would say, an impractical level. 70 years after the death of the creator, you can still protect copyright. Mm-hmm. The origin of this extremely long period lies in Walt Disney and the protection of Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. Every time they tend to get out of their copyright, the Walt Disney organization made the US government push this term higher and higher. And this has become the internationally accepted term 70 years after the death of the creator, which is weird because you have now lots and lots of so-called orphan creations or books or any other creations of art where the author is dead, where nobody knows who is the owner of the rights, but they're still falling under protective rights. And that's a weird situation. And that's actually something that you don't want, because if there's nobody to claim the rights, why should there be rights in anyhow? So that's the weird thing. So this movement against this copyright also incorporated a movement against the patent rights. And there's a sense of feeling, and it originates a bit about the big court cases between Samsung and Apple, where really the court cases were mostly in the multi-billion-dollar range. Mm-hmm. So really expensive, very, very big numbers that were paid. It is believed that the patents are being an additional layer of complexity at the mere cost of the consumer. Mm-hmm. That is a misconception that I would like to get out of this world, because the weird thing is that any product is getting cheaper as the moment there are alternatives.
Right.
Even if these alternatives are protected by a patent, the non-protected is getting cheaper. So the fact that the patent is making stuff more expensive is simply not true. It is only making the stuff more expensive that is incorporating this new technology. But within 20 years, the patent is going to expire. So the fact that a patent system is on the mere cost of the consumer is absolute untrue. It's not true. And you can see it. There's a funny thing is, if you look at the number of patents filed on solar cells for the last 40 years, it's exploding. There's especially in China, there are in the number of 20,000 patents on solar panels. Solar panels have never been as cheap as they are now, and they only tend to get cheaper. So you get more and more patents on solar panels, and the prices are dropping. So it is absolute bullshit that patents are making solar panels more expensive. They're making them cheaper, and there is proof. I can just show you the graphs. It's like that. Every year, solar panels are getting cheaper. So the misconception of patents are at the cost of these poor consumers is absolute bullshit, and I want to get that out of the world. The fact that there's more alternatives, and if these alternatives are better and new and protected, it is a blessing. It is nothing but a blessing.
So, so in some sense, the patents force creativity because if something is already protected, you have to invent something new and better to entice the consumers.
That's the thing. That is also a part of it. It is also that if you have a patent, you can stop others from doing the same. So the patent is protecting your idea. And how does it work? If you have a patent filed and it is granted, so that you have the right to stop others from infringing your technology, then you can simply go to a court and say like, okay, I want this and this party who is making this and this product that falls under my patent, I want them to stop and pay me a fine. And then the court is inviting the other party and is deciding on if you're right or not. If the court decides you're right, then they have to stop. All their material their infringing material need to be destroyed. And they have to pay you a fine. And the nice thing is in the US, you have this treble damages. It is like if you knowingly or willingly infringe a patent of somebody else, the fine can be tripled. In Europe, you have another system, but it's also nice. That is, if you have an intellectual property case, but it's also in trademark law, in copyright law, and in patent law, and you lose, you have to pay all the costs of the winner and the loss of income. So the legal costs, the attorneys, everything. So it is because it is taken pretty seriously on the globe by most governments that this system is, there should be, the protection should be enforceable, and it is.
Could you please tell us about your latest invention?
Well, my latest invention is actually a way to make static images on a screen, on a television, not on a television screen, on a computer screen, dynamic. That means that if there is somewhere a reference to another part of a document or another document or whatever, and you click on this reference sign, it automatically recognizes it. It recognizes where it should look. It opens the text. It searches for the text for this same reference sign, and it puts it in a neat balloon on top of this figure. So it is a very easy way to read documents wherein there's especially figures, wherein there's lots of reference signs and wherein you should go through a text in order to see what every number refers to. It sounds very easy, but if you for instance search in patent documents, you have to realize that there are now over 100 million patent documents, each with their own figures, and if you search, most of the time you search not in the text but you search in the figures, because the human brain is made in a way that you get more information faster from a figure than from text. But in these figures, there are always some things that you don't know or understand. And then you have to get back to the text. This part I automate. So actually what I do is I save time for the one searching. That's the invention. It is working well, but it's not working on a level that is sufficiently good to be a commercial product yet. So I'm trying to increase the correctness of reading this document and getting the right part of the text. And just to give you an example, this text is not searched, it is searched on the number, but it is also searched on text patterns. So instead of looking for specific words, you look, you how would I say, you tag the whole text, like for instance, this is a noun, this is an adjective, this is an article, and then you are looking for the reference sign with a specific pattern. and then you're trying to compare these patterns, all the ones you find, which is the most logical and best description of this number, fully automatically. And this I'm programming. So this is really a big part artificial intelligence, a big part text analysis, text processing, all fully automatically. It's fascinating. I love it. It is also I'm bouncing against walls because, to be honest, I programmed this in a program language called Python. 1 year ago, I didn't know the existence of Python, but I realized that this is the best language to use for processing language. So it is a computer language for processing natural spoken languages. And I managed to make it working 60-70% accurate, which is commercially is a failure, but it is already quite good.
Oh, interesting.
So that's my last invention.
Amazing.
Great.
Yeah. And it's still a learning curve for you. So
yes, and there are some problems I bounce against. One of it is that I do it all alone, and I should start to cooperate. But there I touch into how would I say, some of my restrictions. Let's say it like this.
Okay, and you said previously that from architecture you decided to go to do
Chemical engineering.
Engineering. Why is this choice, and why after chemical engineering you made your way into the patterns and now you're attorney?
Yeah, that's I always wanted to design things, and in my early life I started this distilling of alcohol, and I found it fascinating. You have water and sugar, and you do certain things with it, and it becomes alcohol. And the funny thing is that the alcohol we made, I made quite a lot of distilling devices. Most of them didn't work well, but the one that I finally made was so good that we really could commercialize it. That I didn't do that, it had another reason, and that is that I did this, funny enough, a lot with my mother. My mother was more of the recipes and I was more of the technology, but together we did it. It was really fun. We made such a high quality products that people were starting to ask for it. But I also saw that if you're in this world, you tend to taste a lot of your own product, and it was killing our health. It was killing my mother's health. It was killing my health. So at the age of, I think, 18, I decided to dismantle this device, and never since I have been distilling alcohol or drinking distillated products. That I'm partly very happy with this decision, because it's a good thing that we didn't carry on destroying our health. But imagine if I was now still in this company, I would have had 30 years already of expanding my company. So I would have been a sort of Johnny Walker. Couldn't be else, because I loved it, I liked it. And so it's in a weird sense, I made there a decision that I'm now proud of that I made, because it was, do you make the world a better place if you send out distillated products that have a big or a high rate of, how would I say, that people are getting reliable of, or how would I say, addicted to it.
Addicted, yeah.
So, but I forgot your question a bit.
My question was about your transition from chemical engineering to the patent attorney. But yes, I think partially you already answered this question. But if you want to,
I was after my studies. I wanted to start in an engineering company to engineer and construct chemical plants, much like my alcohol distilling little plant I made. I worked for a while in engineering, and then I discovered something really, really weird, is that engineers, in order to make life easy, had standardized everything. The pipe sizes, the pressure classes, the flanges, the bolts, everything. And the problem with standardizing is if you live in a standardized world, the only difference is your price.
Huh.
So whenever we bid for a new design for a factory, they just indicated the standards and they compared the price. So there was a huge price pressure on engineers, and I was really, really sad about that, because engineering in the Netherlands, and I guess all over the planet, is one of the most difficult studies. And if you're then finished and you see that you're only being pressurized to get less and less being paid, it was like, I have to get out of here. It is very bad for our how would I say, for our economy as a whole. But I don't want to be inside this victim role, like being only there on a very low salary. So that's why I quit this engineering. And when I looked for other things, just to give you an example, when I got into the European Patent Office, my net salary from an engineer at an engineering constructing company to becoming a patent examiner went by a factor of 3, the net salary. And then I was like, this is bizarre. My contribution to the society as a whole, in my vision, was higher as an engineer than as a patent examiner. But the salary was there 3 times as much. So that's why I went out of this engineering job. But if you look in my heart, same with this computer program, I'm engineering.
Yes.
And all the inventions I was busy with, it's hardcore engineering because I love it.
Yeah, seems like you found the perfect way to combine your passion and things which can provide for your daily life. That's great.
So engineering is a form of problem solving, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much like inventing, actually.
Okay.
It is the difference is between engineering and invention is that the solution that you provide as engineer does not need to be new. The fact that you're inventing means that you come to a solution that is new.
I see.
And new in the sense that it has not been or there or not have not it is not done before. So that's the difference. But for the rest, it's problem solving.
Great. Hendrik, and what are your goals for the next 5 years in your business? And maybe you would want to share some of your personal goals too.
Yes, well, I've been for a while maybe a bit frustrated. I went very, very fat. I was close to 150 kilograms. You wouldn't say it now, but I was 147 was my top. So that's about 300 pounds. That's huge, really huge. I want to reduce it to 90. And there's a reason behind that. If you look at people for my length, and you look at the research, the absolute lowest chances of dying from weight-related diseases is, for my length, 90 kilograms. So I decided, okay, I want to become 90. I also want to serve till 90, which you need a good health. So I must be 90 kilograms. So that's one of my personal goals. And I'm on the way. I'm on the way down, but I'm now at around 110. So I still have 20 kilos to go. There's no rush. It just I'm eating tomatoes and other healthy stuff. It's slowly going there. That's one of my personal goals. Another one is finding the love of my life. I don't know if I put it in the
Yeah.
And
You do.
there is one thing, and that's really funny. There's this book of Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits, and somewhere I think in chapter 2 or 3, there's he gives an idea of writing a mission statement, a personal mission statement, or a personal statute. It's in Dutch translated as statute, the term, but I think in the English or the American, it's a mission statement. And I wrote one because I thought it was good. And in there, I also wrote like what kind of person do I want to be? What are my values? How do I am in this world? But also, what kind of person would I like to have as my partner? And the funny thing is, it's a checklist of about 10 points. There's only 2 about the appearance. The rest is about personality. And I haven't met her. There's always one of the criteria that somebody falls through. And the weird thing is, these criteria is not like you're a mechanical idiot, like you have this checklist. No, it is criteria that resonate on an emotional level. So it sounds like it is mechanical, but it is just a piece of paper reflecting my emotional feelings. The weird thing is, I know lots of people who never wrote them down and sort of forget 1 or 2. Get married, get children, and then find out like, hey, this and this point are missing. So it is just my way of seeing it. And as long as I haven't met the one that is really reflecting all the points, I rather stay single. So that's another goal. Then I want to have my group of followers sufficiently big that I can provide them with value on this patent tools that I'm now making, and they will not be for free because I also want those users to give me value back in the sense that I can live from that.
Yeah.
And for that I need about 1,000 people as client. Sounds like a lot, but if you look at my current business, I think I have some 150 paying clients in my patent field, so it's okay. But the goal is to step out of the being paid per hour to being paid per product. And in that sense is an intangible product analysis, because the copying an intentional product is nowadays at zero cost.
Interesting.
So that's a bit the idea. But I'm not yet there, and I'm struggling for a long time.
Sounds great. And
Because
what do you like about surfing?
Oh, this is almost esoteric. I just tell you a story. Sometimes I go at around 6 in my little car. I put my surfing gear, my wetsuit, my kites, and I drive off to the sea. There's a specific spot where there's a quite shallow water, and then going into the deep where there's really high waves. And I'm the only one, you think. But there's quite a lot of sea animals there. And if I'm surfing, I am absolutely happy. And why is that? It is there's no interaction with human beings that have maybe a second agenda. It is only you trusting powers that are way bigger than you. The water, the sun, the wind, all these powers are way bigger than you. So it makes you very, very humble. But the cool thing is, you're not alone. There's seals, quite a lot of them. And the funny thing is, most of the time, if you surf with a group of people, they stay away. But if you surf alone, they will follow you. So it is weird. You're on the sea. You're completely alone. You don't see them. Very rarely you see them, because they know exactly if you go that way, then most likely you look that way. They breathe always on the part where you're not looking. But the moment they're there, you feel them. And that is such a magnificent feeling. So it is absolutely powerful. You're in your element, you're totally having fun, and you're being studied by other creatures other than humans. It's fascinating. And it is also weird that how come you feel them? You know, that they're only watching you, and they're also having fear that you can threaten them, so they stay in a specific distance. You don't see them, and yet you you experience them. That's a part. And then for the other thing, in the wild sea, being in between waves of more than 3 meters, like you're there. You can, if you do one single thing wrong, you're dead. It is fascinating. It is spiritual, I would say. And for people who have never been on sea with a wind force 9, having waves of 3 meters, you cannot explain what the feeling is exactly, but it is fascinating. And it has to do with forces that are way bigger than you, and that you have to be extremely respectful to your own health, respectful to your material, respectful to the forces you play with. It's great. It really is.
Magnificent experience. Yeah.
It sounds like a form of meditation where you are present in the moment.
It's exactly spot on. It is a meditation. But people think that meditation is like sitting in silence doing nothing. I tried several times. My sister invited me for a weekend Vipassana meditation. That's not for me. It's absolutely not for me. No, you're there with lots of people, and everybody tries not to look at you or communicate. If you are with people, I prefer to communicate. The funny thing in the sea, you can't communicate with other people. You're there. You're there, and there's too much to worry about to communicate with other people.
That's interesting. It's really interesting. While you were talking, I was imagining all this, and
it's cool. Yeah, it is. It's cool. It is.
Hendrik, what was your biggest aha moment? Could you please recall and share with us?
There's quite some. But I would say my biggest aha moment is about 2 years ago that I discovered that my way of being, and especially in relation-wise, I have been very, well, let's say clumsy for various reasons. And that you can turn that around. And it is 2 years down the road, I've improved massively, and I'm still improving. One of the reasons is what I disclosed in this American Real 21 Life Track. Mm-hmm. And there's more. It's the reasons I realized are all in early childhood programming. Yeah. And the nice thing is of programming is you can reprogram.
Right.
That's the biggest aha moment, I would say. Like, okay, seeing that you have a problem, because, that's the first thing. Huh? You have to see that you have a problem. Then seeing the solution, then applying the solution, and then accept it to the new level. That's and I'm in the stage 3, stage 4 of this learning process. And it is a fascinating thing, but it was really a big aha moment. Like, hey, all the things I do, also the commercial success has to do with my early childhood programming. It's fascinating. And it can be reprogrammed. That's the cool thing. Yeah. It's not I don't suffer from it. It is just I realize it. And now I'm in the reprogram.
That's great.
It's a really, really big aha moment, I would say. And for the rest, there's lots of them, but this one is really the biggest, I guess. It's a bit late, I would say, because I'm now 47. I would have had this in 27, but That would be nicer, but
Yes, but as you told, that the fact that you recognized and saw the problem, the root, it's a lot, because without this, nothing else is possible even to happen.
yeah.
Henrik, could you please tell us, as this show, our podcast is for and about people who are testing all paradigms with the help of the new technologies, inventions, and new ideas. My question is, how do you test and shift the old paradigm? In which way?
Well, it is the paradigm that I'm going to shift is the way we treat and get patents. And nowadays, if you want to have a good patent, you need a specialist. And it's a highly paid person, which makes the barrier to get a patent very high. If you realize that 1 out of 30 or 3 out of 100 patents about get successful, there's a huge group of people benefiting from this system that is actually making it more difficult than easier. The reason that I'm on this planet is to shift that paradigm, to make it so much easier that it can never be, the burden can never be getting the protection. Sometimes the burden is getting the protection for inventors. It should not be. The burden, the technology burden, and the commercial burdens are high enough, I tell you. The burden of the protection should not be there, because the other burdens are high enough. There's a selection anyhow.
Mm-hmm. And what should be instead of this burden? How do you think? How do you envision this?
Oh, this is a program wherein a very short description of the invention can already generate a very good patent application document. So it is an automatic procedure to get a patent application document, and it will be a set of modules. And I'm only working on the first module, and it is a difficult process. But what you see is that every job can be automized, every job. And I'm partly automizing the patent attorney. That does not mean that the patent attorney will be out of work, because he will far more getting a consulting and an advisory role. So it's not that I want to put my colleagues out of work. I want to give them more time for more interesting stuff.
For creativity.
Yes.
Okay, I see.
But that is really a paradigm, and it's a big thing. It's also a big, vision.
Yes, okay. And I have heard that that's your mission, basically.
Yes.
And could you please share with our listeners and with us your values? Because we believe that it's very important, and the shortest way to get connected with people, to share, to tell them your values. So what would be your top values? How do you think?
I would say read the 10 Commandments. It is. I put my values in this mission statement, and they perfectly reflect, without me knowing, the 10 Commandments in the Bible. I'm not a very religious person, but it is really funny to see that these 10 Commandments are pretty universal. Mm-hmm. And it's like, don't steal, don't lie, don't cheat, don't respect the elderly, respect your health, respect.
Do you think that morals and ethics, these things are something we are coming to this world, we are naturally born with, or it's something artificial? How do you think?
I think we're naturally born with it, because we're social animals. There's also a lot of conditioning that tries to get it out. If you look at every organism on the planet, strives for, I would say, power and laziness.
And laziness, okay.
And those forces are against these moral values. And this is a reproductive trait. The more power you have, the more, how would I say, likeliness you have, or it's more likely that your offspring is well off. So people, especially men, strive for power. And laziness is also, if you have sufficient time, then you can reproduce more. So these both factors are actually reproductive biological stimulants. But both of them are more or less against these moral and ethic values. That's the weird thing. Or they're not if you are in a system of trust and how would I say? If you trust everybody around you, you can still gain power and laziness. But mostly, people think that power and laziness can only be in a fear-based system. And a fear-based system is really kicking out all these moral values.
Yeah.
And a trust-based system should be. But it is always difficult to get in a trust-based system. And I would refer to the Catholic Church in the Netherlands, for instance. It is based on an ethical, moral system, yet it became a sort of dictatorship, the church as such. And that's weird, it's like this should be a system that is teaching us how to behave. And they tend to give, and this is not now, but it is for a long time. And it is also why in the Netherlands this Reformation and this Protestantism was so big, because this old force, this old church was so suppressive and so dictatorial. So it's weird. So I think they're in all of us, but there's always a continuous threat that people try to tend to the fear-based domination.
Okay.
And the fear-based domination is the same force that is killing all creativity. And what I told you earlier, poverty is a huge stimulant of creativity. A fear-based system is killing it. Like a dictatorship or where there's no justice, where people can really get rewards for stealing of others.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, a lot of work to do in the future to transform.
I think that there's actually more and more people getting to the realization or the idea, like, hey, it is not about fear-based systems. It's more like the trust systems are better. And there are some great examples that are so directing the other direction that we all see, like, hey, we don't want this actually.
Yeah, I agree with you, Hendrik. And the last question I would like to ask you, is there something we didn't ask you about but you would like to share with us, to talk about?
That's a good one. I would ask everybody. I'm now trying to set up a podcast. Have a look and see what you think about it. It's called the Patent Guide. That's the only thing. It's a short commercial break.
Thank you for such an amazing conversation and interview. It was really our pleasure to get to know you a little bit more.
Yeah, thank you for the interview. And let's in the future do this again.
Yes,
it's really nice to give this a follow-up, I don't know, a year or something. That would be really nice.